Elon Musk started sharing by saying that he thinks it would seem like we're headed into a recession here in 2023. The magnitude of that recession is debatable, but he thinks it's at least a light to a moderate recession. Potentially it's on the order of 2009. According to Elon Musk, the most prudent course of action is to make preparations for the worst case scenario while maintaining positive expectations. Avoid taking too many risks and keep an eye out for things like margin debt. In a stock market that is unpredictable, he encourages individuals to avoid taking on margin debt, and from a financial perspective, he tells them to keep their powder dry. When the market is in a downward spiral, some really drastic things can happen. Even though you had a loan with a low margin, you still got hammered in that place and subsequently recovered, and he believes that you know too much higher levels, but if there is something resembling widespread panic in the stock market, then you really need to be careful about margin debt. We are aware that the economy moves in cycles. A downturn in the economy is long overdue, and he believes that we will be experiencing turbulent times over the next year to 1.5 years, according to his best estimate. After that, around Q2 and Q24, things start to become clearer. Recessions are not like booms. They do not continue on indefinitely. However, recessions don't help much either. Chamath Palihapitiya says that he has been guiding our portfolio company CEOs to be at cash flow break even now or extend the runway to Q1 of 2025. Well, Elon and Chamath are kind of roughly in the same place that they have been for a while. This is like mid-24 is when the recession ends, and you need to give yourself 2 to 3 quarters of buffers so that you can go and race around, which takes a quarter to 2 quarters. And once you start to escape velocity out of a recession, having money through the end of Q1 2025, he thinks is a minimum requirement. And you know, of the companies that he thinks were the most precariously positioned, there were 5 of them that got their acts together and really did it. But these are all CEOs of companies. Elon Musk said that Stan Druckenmiller does recall last year, he predicted that inflation would last the spring of 2021 when transitory was the word of the day. This year, he predicted the bear market rally we had in July and August. And he remembers back at the coaching summit in May, then around that time he was interviewed and he basically was saying that as soon as there was a bear market rally over the summer, he would then put a short position on. Now, he is predicting a hard landing in 2023 with a deeper recession than many expect. Chamath said that Druckenmiller is one of the best investors for him. Chamath indicated that Druckenmiller has been doing interviews pretty much every quarter for the last 2 years, and he's been pounding the table telling everyone what's gonna happen, and it all happened. And he even told people about the trades in mid-2021. He said he was short elongated treasuries and he was long commodities. And if you had put those 2 trades on at that time and held them today, you would have made a fortune. And so Chamath thinks he is an extraordinary in his ability to kind of see the macro in a way that others don't, but also to take extremely brave action with his portfolio. He's renowned for how big the bets that he makes and how quickly he can change his mind when he's wrong and make another big bet and still get himself out of the hole. Druckenmiller is incredible. According to Chamath, the greatest company loser in terms of dollars this year was big tech. And he believes that people witnessed 3 things happen this year that he thinks are essential for the future. The first reason was it was the trade that was most heavily participated in by retail traders as well as professional money managers, and that fever gradually subsided in the second half of this year. And now going to these last few weeks, you're seeing a lot of panic selling to cover losses and other things. So Chamath thinks that number 1 happened. Number 2. Regulators basically said that we are going to go after these guys every single way we can. And then number 3, he thinks started to change the innovation cycle where people now actually believe that they can outspend because folks won't tolerate it. And the things that they're spending their money on seem kind of foolish. And so he thinks the big tech is probably not discussed enough, but it was a huge loser for this year. David Friedberg was also questioned in this interview. David Albert Friedberg is a business owner, angel investor, and entrepreneur from the United States. He founded and led the Climate Corporation. Monsanto paid $1.1 billion buying it in 2013, making it the first pioneer company in the new field of agricultural technology. The journalist inquired about Friedberg's biggest business loser for 2022. Friedberg said that it is just simple. It is FTX. He meant that was such incredible revelation of the scale of the scam and the fraud and the craziness that went on. And he thinks what was interesting about FTX is it had implications not just for crypto and not just for kind of offshore or regulatory, not just for fraud, but also for the investors. We had a whole debate about whether the press and journalists failed to appropriately investigate this guy rather than give him accolades because he said the right things, which he said he did over him. And investors failed to do relevant amounts of due diligence or form a board and have proper governance over him because they wanted to be a part of the hot new thing and everyone had the capital to deploy. And he thinks what was interesting about the FTX failure is it wasn't just a failure due to fraud, but it revealed so many parts of systemic laziness and systemic blind eye and systemic bias that allowed and enabled this to happen. It was really a revealing kind of failure, and that's why he gave it the award. David Oliver Sacks is a South African-American entrepreneur, author, and investor in internet-related businesses. He also owns a business in the United States. And in addition to that, the question regarding his most significant financial setback in 2022 was posed to him. Chamath asked, "Mr. David Sacks, who is your biggest business loser of 2022? David Sacks says that he picked Bob Chapek. He is the former Disney CEO. He was Iger's hand-picked successors 3 years ago, but then the pandemic hit, which shut down the theme parks. But then David Sacks thinks the big mistake was allowing himself to be mauled by woke employees into picking a fight with DeSantis over the so-called gay bill that caused DeSantis to retaliate by threatening the special privileges that Disney enjoys in the state. And then he had Iger undermining him because the scenes, this was revealed he thinks in a Wall Street Journal story, that he was grossing to insiders that JPEG was not soliciting his advice and he was undermining confidence in the board, and recently Chapek was forced out and David Sacks was put back in control. Chamath thinks that the worst trend of 20 was the continued profligate spending by the federal government. We have a record deficit and record debt, and this year we are ending the year by adding another $1.65 trillion of spending that nobody can seemingly account for. David Sacks is sharing that the worst trend for him was authoritarianism growing all over the world, and he thinks that's a pretty decent prediction. This year's worst trend is the government colluding with big tech to engage in censorship. This is how they're going to do authoritarianism. In this whole series of revelations known as the Twitter files, we can see this collision. This relationship is between the censors at Twitter and big tech, the bureaucrats at the FBI and the DHS and Pentagon. This is a really disturbing dystopian relationship, as we talked about it earlier. And he feels like we spent all this time talking about the authoritarianism in Russia and China. We seem to be obsessed with combating that and going to war with that, but we don't spend enough time talking about this growing authoritarianism at home. The media doesn't seem to want to report all the Twitter files at all. So let's focus on stopping authoritarianism here. Friedberg shares that the worst trend for 2022 is what he would call interest rate mania, and he thinks that this is the mania that we've been caught up in on this show, and that other people on our thread, people in the business community, and the investing community, where everyone's obsession with did the Fed act soon enough or late enough, and that interest rates ultimately drive success or failure with building businesses and making good investments. And the truth is, when interest rates go the wrong way, good investments can strengthen their way through those environments, but bad investments cannot. Good businesses can make their way through, and bad investments cannot. And so he thinks our mania around the fact that interest rates and the Fed ultimately drove bad outcomes in businesses and investments is a flawed kind of assertion. And we all want to get back to the drunken days where, a low interest rate environment enables us all to be successful and wealthy, and he thinks that's changed, so he thinks it's time for us to get away from the interest rate media and focus more on solid investing and solid business building. If you have any comments or questions, please post them in the comment section provided below. We want to express our appreciation for the time you have spent with us all, as well as the attention you have paid to us, and we look forward to hearing from you.